Hey everybody, this is Modern Refugee. Wanted to do a bit of a wrap-up video from the deer processing videos that I've done here in the last couple of videos, and I want to put together a playlist for those videos so I can keep all the pertinent videos together, plus throw in a couple older videos of mine that talks about some of these tools. But I wanted to go over the tools and the techniques and some of the stories and stuff that go along with field dressing animals. And there's a couple of things that I want to cover right from the very get-go here. And I might have mentioned this in the other videos, but I kind of want to put everything all together. One is the amount of meat you actually get off a deer. That small yearling buck that I processed in those other videos there, I got about 24 pounds of meat off them between the steaks and the ground meat. So there's not a lot of meat on a white-tailed deer. In fact, the largest white-tailed deer I ever took, which was a large 3.5-year-old 8-point, if I remember correctly, I got about 65 pounds of meat off of him. You know, somebody tells you they got 140 pounds worth of meat off a white-tailed deer they killed. That's probably BS. I've never, ever in my life seen that much meat come off a deer. The other thing I know I did mention is most, either when you're hunting or, you know, you get car deer accidents, whatever, a lot of that stuff happens at night. So you have to have some type of light that is to go out and do what you need to do to field dress, to recover, to track, whatever. So light is extremely important when you're doing this kind of stuff, like tracking or scavenging deer. Another thing is the kind of the things that you need to put up that meat. You can venison, you can freeze venison, you can make venison into sausage. Typically, summer sausage and pepper stick or beer stick, what they call it around here, and more or less, summer sausage and beer stick are more or less the same recipe. They're just put in different size casings. Any beef canning recipe will work for venison. I have done beef canning recipes, so that will be included in this playlist as well. You can can both ground venison and you can can whole venison. And regular recipes, anything that you cook, like beef stew or whatever, any of that stuff is, you can substitute venison for any of that, vice versa. Ziploc bags are very important. Freezer bags, freezer paper, these kind of things are awesome to keep on hand with your preps if you plan on doing any type of hunting or preserving meat or anything. I like having both. I have a pretty large amount. We're talking probably 10 boxes of each here most of the time, in either quart and our quart and gallon Ziploc bags, the freezer ones, the heavier ones. The other thing that you want to have is you want to have some kind of plastic if you plan on doing any of this kind of stuff. This regular sheet plastic, I keep several rolls of this here. This one is a 3.5 mil. I also got a large roll of a 4 mil, and I also have some 2 mil here, because a lot of times I will lay the deer down on the workbench or on sawhorses, and I will lay the deer across that like on a board or something. I'll put plastic down, lay the deer on it, and then cover it up with plastic. And then I will typically, if it's cold outside, not do anything. But if it was a little bit warmer like it was this time, I'll stick a bag of ice up into the cavity of the deer, and then I'll maybe lay another 2 bags on top of it to keep it cold, and then I cut it up right away. Another thing, I had people ask me about bleeding or getting the blood out of the deer. Now, that deer I couldn't because it was roadkill. And another thing with roadkill, if you're picking up a roadkill deer and you got all your paperwork and your legalities taken care of, you don't want to field dress that on the side of the road. It's just too dangerous. Take that someplace off in the woods or off in a field somewhere so you're off the road to do that. But not so much the blood, because if you're hunting deer, like with a roadkill, the deer's already dead. So even if you cut the throat or anything, there's no heart pumping to get the blood out of the animal. But when you're hunting deer, like if you shoot one with a bow or like the new crossbows and stuff they have now, 9 chances in 10, that deer is going to bleed out as it's trying to get away. So you've already kind of taken care of that bleeding out thing. For me, I don't worry about getting the blood out of the meat as much as I do getting the heat out of the meat. And if you noticed, I hung that deer upside down with the hind legs spread and the body cavity open. That is the way I was taught to hang a deer or hang any type of animal like that, whether you're butchering a hog or cow or steer, whatever. You hang it that way so the heat can rise up and out of the body cavity, and that will help that meat cool down quicker. If you hang it by the head or the neck, which a lot of people do, that heat just rises up into the upper portion of the chest and the body cavity, and the heat can't escape as much. And I know sometimes people have to hang them by the head depending on you where they're at or who's with them, or like you got you got a really big deer and it's just you, and that's the only way that you can hang it. Sometimes you can't, but as a general rule, I always hang it so the heat can get out of the meat. I always hang a deer upside down. And then what do you hang it with? I hang it with gambrels, and this is a homemade wooden gambrel. And you make the cuts in the legs like I showed you the video, and then this part goes in, and then the little notch here prevents that leg from slipping off this, and then you can hang it up. And the modern versions look like this, and they basically have a bend in the metal here where they hang it up, and then they have a notch where you can hang your rope. You want to have some kind of rope or paracord. I've hung deer even with paracord already, but typically I like to use something a little bit heavier, either rope or use ratchet tie down. This tie down strapping material is very good for that type of work. And on this last deer here, I just put a ratchet tie down around the tree, ratcheted it tight, put the 2 hooks together, had a hook hanging down, and then that gave me the perfect place to put this. Now, if you're by yourself or you have a heavier animal and you want to hang it, and you might not have enough people or manpower there to raise it up. The other thing that I showed in the other video, but I want to be a little bit more specific this time, is a come along. And what a come along is it's a couple of cables on pulleys, and then this is a ratchet. This is basically a ratchet system. So what you're going to do is you're going to hang everything up, and then you can use the lever on the come along to jack the deer up, basically. So come alongs, I've seen a lot of deer over the years too hung with come alongs. And getting the heat out of the meat, another thing that happened with me, when I shot a bear back 10 years ago, was a large bear. It was over 400 pounds walking around, and it was a very warm day. It was like 75 degrees, and we wanted to get the heat out of that meat so the meat didn't start to go bad on us in that heat. And what we did after we had the insides out of that bear, we tied rope around the bear's neck, and we actually threw that bear in one of the fast moving rivers up in the UP, and that cold water basically went through the cavity of the bear, flushed all the blood and everything out of the inside of the cavity of the bear, and it drew the heat out of the meat. And when we pulled that bear out of the river about 4 to 6 hours later, and we took the skin off that bear, the heat was pretty much dispersed. There was no heat left in the meat. So that is something else. It's another technique that you can do to get the heat out of the meat. Now the basic tools. And the 2 tools that I used to field dress that deer was this machete, and then my SE4, just basic survival utility knife, call it what you want to call it. But this did the field dressing, this gutted the deer, and this did my cuts up inside the body cavity. It made the cuts in the legs to put the gambrel in and hang the deer. And then I used the machete here to split that small piece of bone out of the pelvis so I could access the large intestine, and I could take that out. And that's a very important part of field dressing, so you don't get no urine or feces in your meat. You have to make sure that you don't process those or puncture the guts and get any of that material into your meat. Another thing that I was shown now, that you can get knives that have a hook on the back, and they call that a gut hook for making that cut. And the other thing that you can do is once you have your original cut in the abdominal wall, you put your 2 fingers in the cut like this, and you spread it out, and then you take your knife and you lay that in between your 2 fingers. I mean, you don't want to make any contact with the knife with your fingers, and that's actually going to hold that cut open. And then you take just the very tip of your knife and you slide that up, and that will open that abdominal cavity up, so you can take out the intestines in the stomach. And once the intestines in the stomach are out, you can make a couple of cuts and you can pull that stuff out, and then you can reach up, cut around the diaphragm, take that out, and then reach up in and cut your windpipe, your larynx, and your heart and your lungs out, and that's basically it. And you can use a saw to take that bone out of the pelvis, but, you know, something like this with, with my mallet or a branch or whatever you have, and just some light taps will get through that pretty easily, and you don't have a lot of chance of breaking anything or cutting anything that you don't want to. And then a hatchet can also be used, but if you're using a hatchet, you want to use it the same way that I used the machete. You want to lay that down there, and then you want to tap it with a mallet to make that cut. You don't want to be swinging, because what's going to happen, you're going to get one way or another, and you're going to chop your hind leg up, and that's actually some of the best meat, so you don't want to kind of mess that up. And the other thing that you can do is you can use a saw. They make saws that make those cuts, and they look something like this, and this is a little saw that's got a rounded point in it, so you can lay that down in there, and you can cut one side and you can cut another side. But again, I don't find this as easy to use as I do just a large knife like a machete and then a mallet. That works the best for me. And as you can see here, this isn't that big a knife, and you can do pretty much anything you want with a knife this size. And I actually did skinning and stuff with knives this big basically my entire life. Sometimes you want a little bit wider blade, so you have a little bit bigger belly on the blade to make those cuts. But a knife like this is basically, you don't need any more than that. And then it gets into when you're cutting the deer up. And there's different ways you can split the ribs up. I like splitting the ribs all the way up. Again, you can do that with your machete. You can do that with your knife. You can do it with a saw. You can do it with, small hatchets, whatever. This was my mom's hatchet, and she used this hatchet for cutting meat like that. She also used it to dispatch chickens. She used it for things like cutting up pumpkins and squash. And she also used meat cleavers. She would use a cleaver for, making cuts and splits on stuff too. And you can see actually on the back here how jagged this is here. She actually beat on this quite a bit to make her different cuts. Now it gets into saws. There's several different kinds of saws. Now an actual meat saw looks like this right here, and I've used this meat saw a lot. This meat saw is quite large. If I had to cut big pieces of meat, I can use this right here. If I wanted to cut like actual round steaks that actually has the bone and stuff in it, I can make my cut with my knife and then use this to cut those steaks up. And that actually works really well if your it's really cold outside and the deer is partially frozen. You can make those cuts. But I have found out over the years, saws like this, knocking my camera all over here, saws like this right here, this saw is probably 15 years old, and I've cut up multiple deer with this over the years. A saw like this is just a regular small carpentry saw. It's a crosscut saw. It's got the real crosscut teeth on it, so they're just a little bit finer. I just take this and I only use this on meat, and I wash it when I'm done with it. I dry it off good and I put it up, and you can see here it's already started to develop a little bit of a patina. And this saw is still, because I haven't cut any wood or anything with this is actually still very, very sharp, and this works for me for cutting up deer and stuff. So if I want to cut the pelvis, I want to cut the spine off and separate the spine from the hind legs and cut the hind legs apart through the pelvis, this works great. And like I said, I just wash I just wash the blades good, make sure that they're dry before I put them up. Maybe put a little bit of olive oil on that to keep the teeth from rusting, and this works good. And I actually went and got another one here just recently here, and this one's actually got a little piece of rubber tubing over the teeth, which makes it even better. So I got like a spare for the one that I've been using here. Same thing with this one. If I use this, I'm going to wash it, and then I'm going to clean it good, let it dry, and I'll slide this over to protect the teeth, and I'll keep this with my cleaning stuff. And lastly, of course, is your boning and your deboning knives. And that's where knives like the bird and trout knives, this style of knife right here, you wouldn't think that you could cut up a whole deer with knives this small, but you can. These are sharp. They're very nimble. You can get in. You can make the cuts. And I actually just got this knife here not too long ago. I did like a little review on it. That'll be in the playlist as well. I got this from that Rapid River Knifeworks up in the Upper Peninsula. And this guy was awesome for, taking off the front legs of that deer, deboning it, cutting it up. And then this is actually an ESSI CR 2.5. And this, again, works very, very well for deboning and cutting up deer. And I've used this multiple different times as well. And you can also use things like fillet knives work really good for deboning deer, or actually deboning knives here. This one right here is just one of the ones out of the kitchen, and it's got a little bit of a flex to it, so you can cut and carve and do what you got to do. And then, of course, I always have some dish pans, some large stainless steel pans here, so I can trim the meat the way I want it to. I can cut my chops the way I want it to, and then all that stuff for trimmings or whatever could go in either the dish pan or one of the other pans, and that can be ground. Now I can grind meat here. I've got several electric grinders. I've got hand grinders here. Those all work, but when you're grinding meat, that just adds another couple of hours onto your processing. A lot of places that will process deer, or that have like an old style meat counter in a grocery store or whatever, ask those folks if they can grind the meat for you. And that's what I did. They will, for like 50 cents a pound or $1 a pound, they can grind your meat. And trust me, I think it was 50, I don't even really know how much they charged me per pound, but I took my ground meat in, or the meat that I wanted ground in there, and I said, hey, I'm trying to get this deer done today. I got a lot of other stuff. Can you guys grind this meat up for me? They charged me $7 to grind up whatever it was. I don't know. It must have been, I'm going to say maybe 17 or 18 pounds of that deer that they ground up for me. Took them like 15 minutes, and they had it all ground. They put it in a bag for me. They gave it to me. I took it home, and I packaged it up in a Ziploc bag. So sometimes you can cut corners by doing stuff like that. You can find a place where you can take your meat in to have that ground up. And then the other thing too, seasonings and stuff. I like to keep a little seasoning stuff here and some casings and stuff in case I want to make some Landjägers, which are like small hunter sausages, or beer stick, or if I want to make some summer sausage. I keep stuff like my meat cure here, stuff like Tender Quick. I have different summer sausage seasonings. One of the main ones is mustard seed. I like to keep a lot of mustard seed here so I can make that sausage. And the other thing, like if you're making sausage, or if you're making like jerky or anything like that, you can take that meat and you can freeze it until you have time to do that. So I froze all the meat this time around, and in a couple of weeks, when after I have my my knee surgery and stuff, and I'm here at home and I can't do that much, maybe I'll thaw out some of that and I'll whip myself up a batch of summer sausage in the oven or whatever. So just because you get your deer doesn't mean you have to do all that stuff at once. You can freeze your meat. I like to cut it up ahead of time, so if I want to make jerky, I'm going to strip the meat up and then freeze it. Then I can take it out, I can brine it, do whatever I want to do with it, and then I can go ahead and process that. But you can freeze it, wait till you have enough time, and then go from there to go ahead and do that stuff. Make your sausage, make your pepper stick, make your jerky, whatever. You can make that at a later point. But anyway, it was a real blessing to get that deer, even though it was an accident. And, you know, it would have been nicer if I could have got one out hunting and showed you guys all the different tracking and aspects of it too. But you know what? This happens every day. There are deer hit by cars here in Michigan every day. And, you know, it's a good way to utilize the meat. So it was a real blessing that that did happen. And I was able to get some video of that so I could show you guys how to process that and how to basically dismantle a deer for consumption, basically. But anyway, this is Modern Refugee. Appreciate all my subscribers out there. Hope you guys always get some information and some entertainment out of my videos. Just wanted to go over here the tools and the techniques and do a wrap up for you guys and show you guys about processing an animal. You guys have a good one.